Captain Bebop for the TV series. So that's the first disc. Second disc. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. And number 6. Then you got the movie, Cowboy Bebop the movie. There's actually a really great anime, I reckon, this one. A great story to it and good animation. I'm pretty sure, what's his name? Chris Stuckman. He's a big sort of fan of this movie too. And the TV show as well, I think. Probably the best film, I think, by the Studio Ghibli. Hayao Miyazaki, however you say his name. That's Cavern of the Winds is an absolute masterpiece. I think this film is probably the best film, in my opinion, out of the Studio Ghibli films. Yeah, definitely a great film, this one. I'd love to get perhaps the Blu-ray edition of this, and even more so, but there's actually a Steelbook edition too, which I'd really love to get, but it's rather expensive. So that's that. Princess Mononoke, which is another good sort of film. It's sort of cheap-ass sort of Asian release of it. Another one, Porco Rosso, which is probably my favourite Studio Ghibli film, about a sort of flying pig, which just kind of sounds like an odd movie, but yeah, it's actually really good. I think this is probably my favourite. It's not necessarily the best one. One of the first sort of Studio Ghibli films I've seen. But yeah, good for that one. Wishful of the Heart, which I think pretty sure I've watched, and I don't know, it was perhaps a little bit sort of childish, I think, for me. But yeah, definitely not a bad film though. Spirited Away, really sort of popular film, and yeah, good film, that one. Ponyoku, which I think I did sort of watch. The first time I watched it, I only sort of watched half of it because I just wasn't getting into it, and but I have sort of watched it a second time and sort of managed to finish it, and it was actually pretty good. I think perhaps the second half maybe was a little bit better than the first half, but yeah, that's sort of our one. A few more anime movies. Blood the Last Vampire, which is kind of like a short, pretty sure only like 40 minutes or something, but this is a great sort of vampire type movie. I think there's actually a live action version of this came out a few years ago as well. Very sort of same sort of storyline with everything, but yeah, it's a good one. Jinro, the wolf, what's it called? Wolves in Human Armor. This is another really great anime. This one, it's one of those films I think you need to sort of watch it in sort of the original sort of Japanese audio, because I just love sort of the really deep sort of male Japanese voices, and just yeah, it's really great, I think. Yeah, definitely a great film, that one. Sort of based, at least it's sort of based on the Red Riding Hood story, I guess, in some ways. But yeah, that's a good one. X, which is another great sort of 90s sort of anime. Go-Go 13, the Professional. This is sort of one of the, but sort of old style sort of 90s sort of animation, which I really like, and I'm more a sort of fan of the old sort of 90s sort of anime, and I'm not sort of a huge fan of sort of the newer sort of 2000 type, because a lot of those are just really sort of silly, and I sort of prefer these sort of something that's perhaps a bit more simpler. I'm pretty sure there's a sequel too, Go-Go 13, I think the Golden Coin or something, or the Queen, the Queen Bee, I think it's called. Which I've never sort of seen that one, but I do like this one. This is actually really good, this one. Royal Space Force, which is another great sort of anime, which I did sort of pay $30 for it, because I was very keen to get this film. Pretty sure I saw it on TV one night and just absolutely loved it. Very sort of slow-paced sort of drama in some ways. Essentially sort of about the very first sort of Japanese sort of astronauts, I suppose, sort of going into space, I think, for the very first time. But I actually did quite enjoy this one. It was actually really good. Space Adventure Cobra, which is a great sort of 90s sort of style animation to it, and yeah, good, that one. Living the Third, which is kind of like a yeah, sort of secret agent, you know, type James Bond, in some ways, type movie. And Metropolis, which is sort of made by the same guy that created Astro Boy. This is another really good film, that one. Millennium Actress, which, yeah, I wasn't necessarily sort of a huge fan of. It was a bit confusing, a bit sort of abstract type film, I suppose. Same as Perfect Blue, I think made by the same people. And they also did Paprika, which is all three of those films, and this one included, it was just, yeah, a bit sort of odd, and the storyline's a bit hard to follow, I think. So I'm not necessarily sort of a huge fan of them ones, but anyway. Grave of the Fireflies, which is a very sort of depressing type film. About this sort of this, you know, these two here that they're sort of set during, I think, pretty sure it must be World War II, and their mother dies, and so they're sort of left defenseless by themselves, and you know, the older brother's got to try and look after his little sister, and a bit of a sort of sad, you know, type film. Another one here was actually very sort of similar. A lot of people don't listen to talk about this one that much. It's sort of based on, well, it's based on a sort of true story. Of what sort of happened to the manga artist that sort of, you know, created this anime. Basically, sort of set, yeah, during World War II, and basically the drop of the atomic bomb in Japan, and it's kind of just sort of set in the eyes of a child, and you know, when the sort of the, you know, horrific thing that happened to this bomb dropped, and just, yeah, it's yeah, a bit of a hard film to watch, because there's a lot, you know, a lot of sort of, you know, all these sort of yeah, I don't know, perhaps going too much, but it's just, yeah, really a bit depressing in some ways, and it's a horrible thing for this atomic bomb, and all this fallout that caused from that atomic bomb, and that's a good film, that one. A bit depressing though. Love Fantasy, My Beautiful Girl Marie, which is, I think, a Korean film. Not too bad actually. Yeah, that one. I'm pretty sure this is like, I don't want to say it's like a pirated copy, because it is like a very sort of, you know, well-made copy, but I think it just might be in some ways might be a bit of a cheap knockoff. Next one's Ichi the Killer, which is a bit of a sort of a very sort of violent sort of anime. There's actually, I think it's like a live action version of this, which I've never sort of seen, but it does say on the back here that this is supposed to be the more violent out of the two, but I'm not quite sure about that. But anyway, yeah, so that's Ichi the Killer. One called Space Travelers, which I think I've tried to watch a few times, and I just can't follow the storyline to it. I think it's a bit, perhaps a bit lost in translation. I don't know. So that was that one. TV show here called Hack-Sign, which I think I sort of watched the first few episodes and thought that was actually pretty good, so I bought it, but I think after the first few episodes, I kind of lost interest in it. But yeah, I don't know. Hack-Sign, it's kind of like I suppose a bit like the World of Warcraft type thing. It's kind of like a TV show about that, and about these sort of characters that are sort of in this game, and yeah, it's kind of like, you know, like the real people sort of playing these characters in the game, and yeah, kind of their alter egos type thing. A DVD version of Fantasy Planet, which I sort of showed before. One called Time Masters, which I did do a sort of review of, which I had a little while ago. This is a great sort of film, this one. I actually love the end to this. I think the end is just fantastic. It's about the father and son, and the father, this is sort of out on an alien planet, and the father ends up dying. So the film's sort of about the father's friend coming to rescue the little boy off this alien planet. But definitely a great film, that one. This one's sort of by the same director, Light Years. This, yeah, another bit of sort of weird sort of film with sort of weird characters, and I think it's like a French film. I think next film, another Blu-ray, for the last Blu-ray I've got. It's called The Illusionist. Really great film, this one, really good. So she's sort of about this old illusionist, and you know, like magic's, you know, not necessarily all that popular anymore, and so he's trying to find work, and so he goes from I think he's French, so he moves from France over to Scotland to try and find work over there, and he sort of meets this little girl, and she sort of comes along for the adventure with him type thing. It's a bit hard to explain, I suppose, but the film itself is actually sort of a bit of a backstory on the film. It was actually made from like an unproduced script by a famous director. I can't remember his name. I might put like his name down there, but he's a very sort of famous French director, and this is sort of an unpublished sort of script that he sort of wrote. And I have done a bit of research on it, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think the story itself was actually written for his daughter, because it's sort of in real life he's sort of abandoned her, I suppose, in some ways, and so this sort of script was sort of his way of sort of I guess in some ways perhaps sort of saying sorry to her, perhaps to some ways, and I guess, I don't know, in some ways he couldn't sort of say it to her in person maybe, so he sort of wrote this sort of script for her. And I mean, I'm not quite sure if that's 100% true, but that's kind of what I read somewhere and quite a while ago. But definitely, a really good film, I think. Just I don't know, just a very sort of simple story and great animation to it. Just definitely a great film to check out, that one if you've never sort of seen it before. The Illusionist. Lego Non Troppo, I think that's how you pronounce it. This is kind of like a sort of somewhat a bit of a sort of a rip-off of Fantasia. This sort of film was sort of made a few years after Fantasia. It's sort of like, I think pretty sure it's an Italian film. It's just sort of, it's kind of like I wouldn't say necessarily a parody of it, but of Fantasia, but it's just sort of their version sort of it. So you sort of got the similar sort of, you got sort of these sort of short sort of animated sort of features of, lots of sort of orchestral music and sort of great sort of colourful animation, and but definitely good film, that one. Really great animation, and good one, that one. Next one's I think it's I've never sort of seen it before, but it's kind of like a sort of short, it's like 4 or 5 shorts or something on it, and just all done by the same director. Kind of like I don't know, it's called the experimental films. But I've never sort of seen, but it does look quite interesting. I think it's sort of like just a lot of little shorts, I think, on it. I don't know that much about it, to be honest, but it does look quite interesting. Next one, I should have pronounced it properly, but Persepolis or something. Another sort of great sort of foreign film. I think it's all shot in black and white. Sort of based on, I think it's like an autobiography type thing of this girl here and her life of growing up. I think in the 70s. I think she was originally from Iran, but because of sort of the I think it's like a war going on, or a very sort of not a very good environment for her to grow up in. They sort of sent her over to France, and she just sort of about her story, I guess, in some ways. And it was it is a very good film, though. Then we got one, Lucky Luke, which is like a sort of an animated TV show that I used to watch when I was a kid, which I used to love. Sort of going to the video shop and hiring out Lucky Luke videos and watching them all the time. I did sort of watch this the other day, and it wasn't really all that great, to be honest. I didn't really enjoy it that much. I don't know, perhaps I liked it a lot more when I was a kid. I mean, obviously this is only probably I think it's like one movie, so it's probably more movies, and the TV show might be perhaps a bit better than this, but so that's that one. One more shelf to go. Actually, I'll go this one first. Watership Down, which I suppose is a bit of a sort of an animated classic. Another sort of, a lot of films like this that are sort of kind of all about sort of using animals to sort of tell a story of sort of about, I don't know, political aspects about people, and just sort of about these sort of rabbits that are sort of been driven from their home type thing, from because man's come along and developing the land, and so they're sort of going to lose their home, so they've got to sort of move and find somewhere else to live. And but it's definitely not like a kid's story, though. It's definitely very sort of adult sort of themes to it. Lots of sort of killing of rabbits, and rather sort of a bit of a horrible watch in some ways. That's Watership Down. Then there's a sequel called Plague Dogs, sort of about these sort of 2 dogs that sort of escape. This kind of like sort of test animals for this laboratory, and they sort of find a way to escape. you know, because they don't want to be tested on anymore and, you know, tortured. Yeah, it's just sort of about these two, about the two dogs and how they sort of on this sort of, I think pretty sure it's in like the, I don't know, the I want to say Scotland, like the Highlands of Scotland, sort of all these sort of cold, sort of open plains and mountain sort of regions. You know, these two dogs are trying to find food and, you know, just trying to escape. And it's a great film. I think I actually probably prefer this one a lot better to perhaps the Watership Downs. And I do love the end of this one. I think the end, it's a sad ending, but I think it's a fantastic ending. And I did sort of hear somewhere that there's obviously, because it's based on a book, both those films, both, you know, Watership Downs and Plague Dogs are both written by the same person. But I did sort of hear that there was a version where they sort of rewrote the book and to sort of give it a happy ending, which I think sort of found quite surprising. But definitely, yeah, sad ending, but it's, yeah, great film, that one.